Welcome to AI for Founders. I am Ryan Estes. Today's guest is Hikari Senju, the founder and CEO of Omnichannel, a company that's transforming advertising with generative AI. Hikari studied computer science at Harvard, and before launching Omnichannel, he built Digest AI, an AI email summarization tool that was eventually acquired. In 2018, he set out to solve one of the biggest bottlenecks in digital marketing, scaling creative. With 13 million raised, including early backing from Village Global, Omnichannel has become the go-to SaaS platform for e-commerce brands looking to create personalized, data-driven ads at scale. Hikari's vision is bold: empower human creativity through AI, not in spite of it. And just last week, his team launched a brand new campaign launcher that makes deploying and testing creative faster than ever. He's part engineer, part artist, and completely committed to building a future where data and emotion aren't at odds, they're in sync. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the podcast booking agency that helps founders like you turn conversations into conversions. If you're a tech founder, a SaaS exec, or a creator in hyper-growth mode, podcast interviews aren't just good PR, they're a cheat code. But here's the problem: finding great shows, getting booked, and prepping for each episode takes serious time. That's where Kitcaster comes in. Their team handles everything from pitching to placement, so you can focus on showing up, sharing your story, and building trust with listeners who are ready to buy, partner, or invest. And these aren't random shows. We're talking curated placements on top podcasts in your category with hosts your ideal customers already listen to. Visit kitcaster.com to learn more. Start conversations that convert with Kitcaster.
Shining stars, computer light, AI, take the flight, in the glow of neon bright.
Hi, Hikari. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I'm so excited to talk about Omnichannel. It's such a cool product. But before we get into that, I would love to hear kind of what's happening in AI right now that gets you really excited.
Well, I guess just the agents, the agentic AI, the browser use, the fact now that AI is kind of on the loose, if you will, or soon, like it'll be able to interact with the world. I feel like we're kind of at a step change now where, we've been almost like, like the AI now is ready to stand on its own 2 feet and start operating on its own autonomously. So it's like a little baby, and we've been nurturing this little baby to a certain stage of mimicking us. We've been teaching them all the stuff that we know, and now it's like a teenager and ready to be independent, kind of. And I feel like we're kind of in that like liminal stage where the AI is like starting to take like act on its own, and I think that's very exciting.
I love that analogy, because then it becomes kind of, from your standpoint, how much autonomy are you comfortable with? For example, if we're talking about it's a teenager right now, teenagers are inherently dangerous, and when I see them, I cross the street and get away from them. I'm just kidding. I have 2 of them myself. But when we're talking about agents and agency, as far as AI goes, what's comfortable for you right now? Because there was kind of there was a pretty famous demo a couple of weeks ago where you could say, hey, book me a trip to Rio de Janeiro and I want to stay in a 4-star place. And the agents kind of went out and were able to enact on that. So that's to say that they have your passwords, they have connection to your bank account, they're authorized to make purchases. And obviously all those kind of, those securities aren't ironed out yet, but it's very close. How do you feel personally?
Well, I mean, I think there's the tactical reality today, which is that this is still very insecure. And that there's things like injections and code injections, and the browser use AIs to hack it so you can leak things like credit card information and passwords. So I wouldn't necessarily say that these browser use AIs are by any means secure, and I would not necessarily trust them with your bank account information today because, there are known hacks for getting, that, you can embed in your website. So when your agent gets there, it like can, for example, spill your private, like your passwords and payment information. So, Um, so I think a lot of that still is being worked out in terms of like today or 2 weeks ago or maybe a week from now. But I think, yeah, I think it's very clear the direction that things are going. And, within the next couple of quarters, hopefully, a lot of these problems are going to be solved, or definitely be more secure. In terms of how much autonomy you give the AI, I think ultimately we're going to give a lot of autonomy to the AI because I think uh, you're probably going to get a better result this way, right? Like if you're like say in a self-driving car, um, you want a car that's fully self-driving might be safer than a car
Yeah.
that's partly being driven by you, right? Like
Yeah.
a car that is full self-driving, or any autonomous system that's more autonomous, it may actually be um, superior in terms of its outcomes than one where a person is kind of potentially in the way, or giving conflicting inputs. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, longer term, I think full autonomy will. And I think there was actually a lot of really interesting research done here in terms of like medical advice and things like this, where it's like in just an AI only system, a human only system, and an AI human system, in which made the best suggestions. And it was actually the AI only system that ultimately, you know, gave the best suggestions because it was able to operate kind of on its own logic. And so like I think that is the unfortunate reality that uh that this that like in a fully autonomous system probably is more secure. It
Yeah.
probably is probably does deliver better outcomes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have the tendency to want to fantasize about like the big picture of AI. But when I really get excited, it's about thinking about it in much smaller ways, and particularly around agents. And the more comfortable I get with different AI tools that are kind of into my workflow, the more I'm outsourcing actually the creative capital of decision making and like identifying problems and things like that. The tool I'm kind of waiting for in a workflow as far as agents goes is the agent that watches my workflow and says, "Let me do that for you. Hey Ryan, I can make this for you. Hey Ryan, you should put this agent together that does these 5 things that will make that. We can predictively know what you're already doing. Let us take care of that for you." And that feels very close. The more I'm vibe coding or whatever I'm doing to solve small problems, the more I see it's kind of the solution is waiting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the world we are in today, which is this kind of co-pilot model, which is kind of human driven with AI assistance. We're seeing that, with these kind of programming tools, tools like Cursor and others, that it's essentially agentic, but you still have kind of human prompting, and human kind of like review, and kind of there's a human in the loop. But also just looking at my world of advertising and marketing, generally, the more humans there are in the loop, sometimes the worse performing these systems are. Um, and so you actually want to remove the humans from the loop because the AI systems operate better without a person in the loop. So um, I think, though today, just given the limitation of the technology in this exact moment, there is, there is a human in the loop, but I do think, like, potentially not only, I mean, like, it's interesting, right? Because like, let's say, um, and this is like working. Let's say you work, and this is I think the interesting human computer interface challenge, which is like, well, let's say that like I am, working with this AI and I'm just wrong, and the AI is suggesting an action, and then I say no, I override it. I want to do this other thing. Like this is the way I want to do it, and then it fails. Do I blame the AI for this? Like say it's all the AI's fault? Like versus if I had let the AI just do its own thing, maybe then we would have had a better outcome. So um, it's like, I don't know. It's like sometimes like when you're working with a really smart coworker, the coworker can explain every single thing as to why they're doing that thing for you, but that is a humongous resource requirement as well for them to now not only do the action but then explain the action to you. And it will get there, but that is a different type of engineering challenge than just can this AI figure out the right action on its own?
100%. And, I want to do a brief introduction to your product, Omniky.
Yeah.
Basically, Omnichannel helps performance marketers save time and drive real business outcomes by creating ads at scale. And
And
to your
optimizing
point, where
campaigns. Yeah.
by campaigns. And now,
Yes.
to your point of like pulling humans out of the loop might be a good idea. This is especially true in advertising and creating ads, because the problem is there's too many cooks in the kitchen and everybody has an idea of what works. And that's oftentimes a disparity between what actually works and what people think is going to work. And for example, with this podcast, I cut up some shorts, and if I feel like I'm pontificating extraordinarily with wisdom, I'll put that out there, 0 likes, 0 views, and I put some outtake where I'm making fun of myself or whatever, and it blows up. So a lot of people spend a lot of time and money with no data behind it, with the assumption that their creative is going to generate the positive outcomes, and in fact, it falls flat on its face.
Right. And so this is what we're building is in what we've been spending the last, we were founded back in 2018, is this platform that optimizes and operates and generates ad campaigns autonomously. And that's why we're called Omnichannel, because we're an omnichannel platform. And it was always about generating personalized ads at scale. But in order to generate a personalized ad at scale, you also have to distribute that ad in a personalized way. You have to make sure that the ad is being shown to the right person at the right time. And so you also need to own the distribution of that content. And so you have to own the entire workflow, from the generations to the analytics to the distribution to the optimization. And so we've been spending the last several years building this workflow. And now it's like when, Frankenstein comes to life, and it's like you've spent all this time building his body, and now you got to zap that little bit of electricity or that agentic, technology. And now, these agents are starting to come to life, with this skeleton, which is the workflow that we've spent the last couple of years building. And so it's a very exciting time for us. And yeah, I mean, I can say personally that like I've had many experiences where, I've been working with some marketer, and you leave a campaign running over the weekend, right? You forget to turn off a campaign, or you launch the wrong ad to the wrong audience, and you realize, and you leave it on over the weekend, and you come back on Monday. You've now wasted 2/7 of your budget, on the suboptimal ad, on a suboptimal audience. And so I think every person who's run ads has had this experience where it's like, ultimately, you don't want a human to be managing this stuff. Like, you want an agent to be working 24/7 on your behalf, optimizing these ad creatives. I mean, a human isn't today bidding on every single ad impression. That's being done autonomously. And now the management of those campaigns should also be done autonomously, because an autonomous system can deliver superior performance in a more secure way than one that's driven by people.
You bet. So Omnichannel launches in 2018. 7 years ago seems like a completely different world. How has the problem and solution that Omnichannel tackled in the beginning changed to 2025?
Yeah, well, the vision has always been that there's a couple of Easter eggs in our logo. So when we're getting founded, like my background is I studied computer science with a focus on machine learning at Harvard, with a deep passion.
Harvard guy, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
yeah,
and my dad's a painter, and so I was always very interested in the applications of creative, like in the kind of the economic like the industry up behind the creative industry, and in particular, advertising is one of the most like viable applications of the creative industry. Many famous movie makers actually, started with making ads. I mean, Walt Disney started by making ads. And so there was a big overlap between creativity and advertising. There's also an element where advertising is always at the forefront of technology. Like, the first websites were all funded by advertisers, and satellites were funded by advertisers, and soap operas were funded by advertisers. And so I'd always believed like the business component of creativity had always been very interesting to me, just because I grew up in a creative household, and I'd also been very passionate about technology. I kind of also grew up in my grandfather worked at IBM, and so I kind of grew up around technology and with technology. And so this intersection of business, technology, and art kind of drew me into this very fascinating world of the creative industry. And what I saw back in 2017, when I was thinking about this idea, is that the creative industry is dominated by these big holding companies, essentially, these creative agencies. And why are these called agencies? It's because creativity historically didn't scale. You have these teams of humans that you can't scale a business of Don Drapers, right? When your business is dependent on Don Draper, the individual genius of a Don Draper, you can only have so many Don Drapers in a building together before they're at each other's throats, before there's too many
It's
egos
a single point
and
of failure. Absolutely.
It's a single point of failure. So you end up building agencies around the Don Drapers, and you have it's kind of like a kind of a sun's, like a planet's like orbiting a solar system kind of universe you have, and you have many of these kind of competing agencies. And so what I saw in the creative industry was a very fragmented, very competitive, kind of splintered ecosystem of that would be consolidated through these holding companies, which are loose associations of these creative agencies with each other. But there wasn't necessarily any kind of, platform scale effect that is typical in a technology. But I did see since studying machine learning in college, and then, creating ads and running ads and being in a business where I was running ads after my previous company was acquired, an opportunity for advertising creative to be automated. And I saw the early generative adversarial network models back in college. I was taking class at MIT and saw that generative art was getting quickly automated. And so there was an opportunity there for the creative industry to also be consolidated around the typical features you see in technology, which is scale effects, network effects, data moats, distribution, kind of lock-ins, things like this. And so that was kind of the vision, is that this very consolidated creative industry is going to be turned into a platform model. And the two biggest companies in the space at the time, and still is Publicis and Omnicom. So therefore, Omnicom, that's what we're called Omniky, because Omnicom is one of the largest ad agencies, and then our logo is the gold monkey. It's the same hex code, the same gold color as the Publicis lion. And so the vision from day one was the creative industry is going to be disrupted by a agentic AI automation platform. And then so we've just been executing against that since 2018 when we were founded. So we started, but 2018, to your point, AI generation was nowhere near good enough. I mean, it was generating artwork, but it was generating very weird stuff, like very pixelated, kind of, wacky, kind of like you almost took an acid trip and you saw all these eyeballs or something, that kind of stuff. But it was good at computer vision, and it was good at, and if it's good at computer vision, then it's good at analytics. And so our first product in 2018, 2019 was a design analytics tool. Let's quantify design. Let's use AI to understand all the different elements of the design using computer vision and for images and videos, and let's discover trends. Let's also do this because I do believe that there was a moat around data, and that building analytics product is one of the best ways of getting access to this data that you can build a moat around. So 2018, 2019, we had an analytics product. 2020, we're also following the generative models closely. So we had GPT-1 get launched in 2018. I think 2019, 2020, we have GPT-2, and then you have GPT-3 around 2020. And so GPT-2 was open source. It was on Hugging Face. And so we took the GPT-2 embeddings, as well as other kind of transformer models like BERT and Ernie, and there was a model called Control from Salesforce. We're testing all these different transformer models to generate ad copy. And so we would take insights to power the generation of ad copy, and we'd also recommend stock photos. And that was our product in 2020, was recommended stock photos based on insights, analytics from the ad platforms through API integrations with the ad platforms, plus copy generation. And then DALL-E comes out, then Stable Diffusion comes out, and then we incorporate image generation into our tool. Then GPT-3, GPT-4 comes out, and it gets even better. It's not only are we now generating ad copy, but generating strategies, generating campaigns, generating targeting. And now just last week, we announced the campaign, generation, omnichannel campaign generator and launcher. So now because we're already integrated with all these different ad channels, Meta, Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit, Snapchat, we will generate those campaigns for you in an omnichannel way, and then we'll launch those campaigns with you with the creative that you've generated on our tool, on our platform. And so it's a campaign orchestration and generation tool. we've
That's
done
so
this by
huge.
riding the AI wave.
Yeah, it's so big because Meta's ad platform is notoriously finicky and very hard to work with. So's Google ads are similar, So talk me
But like,
through
why
that.
is
Is it
that? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's like, why is that? It's because
why is
the
that?
traditional model for UI is broken, right? UI is designed around the 1% of users who are super anal and annoying and will keep bugging you until it's like, I need this use case. And if you're Meta and you're Google and you're selling to, the largest advertisers in the world, well, you're going to build that feature for them because it's potentially tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. It's billions of dollars in revenue. And so, but then that means though that the UI for the Facebook Ads Manager is not really designed for the average small business user or the average novice advertiser. You have literally, last I checked, like hundreds of different options for targeting and creative placement, and it's all just like dumped on you as a UI, and it's very unintuitive. But the thing is that,
100%.
and this is true for Google, this is true for all the other platforms, then copying one of their designs. And so, like, I think ultimately, all customers care about is the audience, the budget, and the creative. That's like ultimately what they get. This is who I'm targeting. This is how much I want to spend per day on these ads, and this is the ads I want to run. And that can be abstracted in a paragraph. And so what we've done is we have this product called the campaign brief, formerly called the creative brief, and it generates, just in a paragraph, what is the audience, what is the budget, and what's the creative. And it's just, we're targeting 18 to 65-year-old lookalike 1%, living in New York or whatever. And then these are the creatives we're going to run. And this is, we're going to spend, $50 on Meta and $50 on Google and, $50 on name your platform. And then we'll go and execute for you. And we'll kind of abstract all the complexity of their UI for you just at the API call. So we'll be like, okay, well, let's find the audiences that are closest to the audiences that the customer is seeking. Let's create the ad form. Let's create the ad formats that reflect the ad formats that were generated. Let's target the audiences that that they've specified in the creative brief. And now you've built the universal interface for launching these omnichannel campaigns. You can just take a paragraph, which is, this is my audience, this is my budget, this is my creative, and we'll just map it to the right API calls for each platform and then run those campaigns for you through an AI. Instead of having to go into each platform.
Yeah.
So
you're
instead of having
replacing
to go
all
into each
the
platform,
login.
learning all that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Replace the logins, you're replacing the dashboards, you're replacing the reporting. So basically the product gets stickier and stickier because the more they're familiar with Omniky, the more they're going to want to see the Omniky-ness of every application that they're using in advertising, which is, there's probably a half dozen major players, and toggling between each of them, boy, is a major headache. Whereas if, from your point, from one paragraph, I can say, hey, I want to target people that like country western shows. I want to sell them belt buckles, and you already have my whole stock of pictures, make it happen, and it can just spread through.
Exactly. I mean, you don't have to learn the complicated UI of every single platform. You don't have to. It takes hours, right? It takes hours to launch a campaign. Like for any one of these platforms, it takes days to learn a platform. It takes hours to launch a campaign. That's why you traditionally paid a lot for an ad agency or marketing manager to do this stuff for you. As well as kind of imbue some intelligence into their strategy. And so, but this is an area that I think an AI is better at potentially than, and what's exciting here also, I think what's exciting for these platforms potentially is, it brings, you can introduce a whole new world of advertisers. I mean, there could be people who just don't run ads because they log in, they're like, I'm thinking of ads, and then they log into Google ads or they log into Meta ads, and like, well, like I just don't, I see this taking a lot of money. I don't see a lot of results. I don't even know how to set up, I'm going to just pause these ads. But if you've built an interface that's more intuitive through chat or through text, I could see the results, then that is more accessible for more business owners. And you can democratize growth, which is what our mission is democratize growth through that mechanism. And so, it's making advertising more accessible for more people through a more, just like, because ultimately, like, this is what you do with an agency, right? Is you have email, maybe you're emailing an agency and you say, hey, this is, the body of that email is essentially the same thing, right? this is the audience, this is the creative brief, or this is the campaign, this is the audience, like creative, can you run this ad for me? Then a person usually at the agency now goes and translates that into an execution. We're just replacing that person into an AI system, and we're placing that back and forth via email into just a creative brief interface and chat interface. And
Yeah.
so that's, and then ultimately, I think the other thing, the key thing to note here is customers ultimately just care about return on ad spend. They don't care if you're running an ad on a specific. I don't think customers necessarily are like adamant that they have to run the ad on one platform. Like it has to be, Google or something. Like I think they just want the best return on ad spend. So if our system can now balance the budget, like before you would spend $50 on just one platform because it was just so annoying to learn every platform. But now if you can do $5 on one platform and $8 on another platform and $2 on another platform and $6 on another platform, and you can equally disperse that spend across maybe a dozen platforms, maybe you can actually more quickly find the platform that works for you. And there are now, to your point, dozens of, there are six major platforms, but there's dozens of options in terms of other platforms to advertise on, whether it's programmatic television or gaming or streaming or podcasts or music. I mean, there is a lot of options in terms of running ads, and so or video let's test those platforms earlier too, because now we've abstracted that into just API calls and kind of this interface that we've just been describing, and we can quickly find the optimal channel that delivers the best return on ad spend for you. And it may not be the one or two platforms that that one thinks of when they think of advertising.
100%. And you're building in really creative and novel ways with AI, kind of tip of the spear. I'm still with you. I just lost my battery. It'll come back. And it sounds like you're kind of fine-tuning commercially available models. When you're thinking about training models, is there an advantage to doing it that way? Building in-house obviously is very expensive, or maybe finding open source LLMs. How are you kind of like tackling how to incorporate your tech stack into your product?
I mean, we appreciate every level of abstraction that makes it ultimately easier for us to achieve our goal. So just like, you're going to pick the best programming language, or you're going to pick the best, compiler, or the best server, or the best database that meets your needs. And, it's not necessarily like, that you're like wedded to one particular database or one particular cloud service. You're just trying to find the best tools to help you deliver the outcome that you're delivering for customers. In our instance, the best return on ad spend for each budget, and also time and cost savings. And so whatever API, open source model, or building things in-house delivers that best outcome for that customer is what we will deliver. I think given the fact that we're a startup, we're operating at a shorter term time frame than potentially a bigger incumbent. And so a big incumbent with a large budget can potentially do 5-year R&D projects and push back the potential ROI of their investments technology into a much future date, and they can make more ambitious bets in an R&D way. As a startup, you're kind of more constrained into a shorter time frame. So and so therefore, like when it comes into build versus buy versus like utilize or something, your calculations and calculus is a little bit different than like a company with with much larger budget. So I think generally it's like if we can build, if you can find a really good model or turn an open source model into something that's useful, that can deliver the results for the customers, then we definitely have a bias towards that. But if it's necessary to build our own in-house models, then we'll do that as well. In order for us to deliver the best outcome for our customers.
Is building your own model wise? Or even a better question is, if you had infinite resources, how would you apply those resources to Omnichannel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? And I think I don't think there's necessarily like the right answer here.
If you're Thanos.
You could be, yeah, I mean, you could build everything, like if or like there are several business models, right? You could be Apple and you could literally build the entire supply chain and, design your chips and own the entire, from literally the design of the chips to the manufacturing and design every component that's critical to the business, and you can do that. Or it could be Dell, and you could just put your logo on a system that you've kind of compiled from other places. And so, I mean, they both are great businesses, both deliver a lot of shareholder value, both have its own areas. I mean, of expertise. And like in terms of long-term enterprise value, I mean, maybe one can say there's value in one method, and maybe one's slightly more defensible than another method. But um, I think just when you're starting up, you do need to quickly get a product market and get build traction. And so I think some of the things regarding build versus buy or outsource or things like this, you can build that moat also as you grow. So maybe like today we're utilizing other models. Maybe we're at a much larger scale. We'll build out these models, but these are champagne problems. I think like it's good problems to have. And I think for us, again, just the area that we're really focused on is delivering the best outcome for our customers. And so that's kind of the primary calculation.
Amazing. I'd like to stretch with this next question a little bit, if you allow me. So I already know that I love you to death because you're putting Easter eggs in your brand. That is something that I would definitely do, which tells me you're a poet. You told me your dad is also an artist and your grandfather was an artist. I looked it up, and Hikari means light in Japanese. How would you say light incorporates into your career and kind of how you pursue the way you make a living?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being, it's really interesting, right? I mean, even the name Hikari, there's two ways you can say it. There's Hikari. So the masculine version of my name Hikari is actually Hikaru, which actually has a slightly different connotation than Hikari. Hikari is actually more of a feminine version of the name. And I asked, I asked my dad, like, well, why is my name Hikari, not Hikaru? And it's because Hikaru means reflective light versus Hikari means you're a source of light. And, I think of names like Luke, right, which, also derives from the Latin word, of light, means light. And so, like, I think being a source of light, being a source of, inspiration, I think light associated with inspiration, with, with love, with all these positive characteristics, being a source of that for other people is maybe a subconscious thing that I've always, kind of motivated me. I think I've largely tried to live a life of service. I was student council I was student council president all through middle school and high school, class president, and my modus operandi when I was in those roles was service. That the president of the class is actually the lowest person on the totem pole. They're there to serve everyone else and to make everyone else achieve have their the experience that they've been seeking from their school. And so that is my view also towards leadership, is that one is a source of you're in service of your team. You're here to empower your team. You're here to be a platform. And then also as a company and as a product, again, our mission is to democratize growth, is to empower entrepreneurs to connect with their customers. We're in service of all our customers to help them achieve their goals. And I think there's the idea that, well, in order to service something, you have to give, and to be giving, you have to be a source of giving. And I think maybe I don't know, being the name meaning light, which means like source of giving, I think is potentially imbued into my approach in leadership as well.
Yeah. You said democratize growth. I also heard a podcast where you said democratize creative storytelling. It definitely seems like you're very mission driven in the fact that like you want to come up, but you want to bring people with you. You want to inspire them. You want to radiate a source of light, which is amazing, especially an attribute as a leader. So where do you think you've developed those characteristics?
I think my mother is a very giving person. She raised three boys essentially by herself in the United States. She came here, without much extended family or networks, and she really sacrificed her life in service of her kids. And I just see, like it's this, yeah, it's really living a life of, you don't ask for anything back, right? You're just giving because giving gives you joy. Um, I think it's just seeing that early on was very important. And I think also as an entrepreneur, ultimately, the job of an entrepreneur, yes, maybe a little bit is to capture value for investors, but the best way to capture value is to create value. And I think it was like a Bill Gates quote. Bill Gates quote is like, if you capture even 10% of the value you create, you're doing your job. Like personal computers, mobile phones. I mean, these created way more value than the market caps of Microsoft or Apple. And so, I think the approach to approach to building great products and an approach to building great companies ultimately is first, let's build something valuable that creates, that helps people and is unique and 10 times better than the alternative. And then we can worry about, the capturing of the value or kind of the other elements. But the first most important part of being an entrepreneur is creating value. And that is done through, like innovative thinking, innovation, and technology, and understanding technology trends and understanding the intricacies of a particular market opportunity and a technology better than incumbents and executing against an opportunity better than incumbents and other competitors. But being value first, like value creation first. There's that. I mean, also, I think, I'm Catholic, and we just had Easter, and just there's really that's something that speaks to me about the religion of love and being selfless and like just thinking about other people first. And it's not we don't live in an eye for eye world. We live in like a a world of giving, and that like and not really expecting anything in return, but you just give because you love humanity. And that there's a little bit of God in everyone. I do think that there's an imbuement of that as well in terms of my like general like worldview is that like that it's like usually I just want to focus on building moving humanity forward, and like whether that is and that is like the primary objective when it comes to like my motivations.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, my condolences for Pope Francis. I was sad to see that, his passing. Cool. I know why we're butting up on time here. Do we have a couple of minutes? My audience loves numbers. Can I do the fire round with numbers real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, are you going to ask me questions about the numbers of our companies? Because there's only so much I can share necessarily.
Okay. If you need to hit the skip pass, just hit the skip pass. Okay. So
what is this? Okay, sure. Go for it. Do I just say skip?
let's see if we can hit a couple of skips here. So, like I told you, my audience, there's 17,000 of us strong. Just about all of them are founders and CEOs. So what you shared today is super impactful for leadership and for building with AI in particular, very helpful. So you launched in 2018. How did you finance the launch of the company?
Well, through my own, so I had some money saved from my previous company that I had sold, and so I literally lent the money to my own to this company at 0% interest. That plus
how generous of you to yourself.
Right. And plus I was very lucky. I had some really great angel investors and backers. So Village Global was a day zero investor. I had got to know them through my previous company, that team, and they were literally like the first day I started the company, they had invested. My boss from my previous company, who had acquired my previous company, was also a day one investor. I was very lucky that my mother was also very, we had saved some amount of money for my grad school for potential, because they were thinking of potentially I was going to go to business school or something. So we had saved a certain amount, and we used to put that money into the company as well. And actually, I think right now, based on kind of the valuations of the company and stuff, she's already made quite a good return on this investment. So I was very lucky. And then I met some other really great angel investors like Richard Socher, who was the chief scientist of Salesforce. He's now the founder of U.com. And also the founder of AIX Ventures, which were early investors in Perplexity and Hugging Face, and He was like a close to day. He was a very early angel investor in the company.
He did
So
a great interview on 20 VC too. I listened to him a couple weeks ago. He's great.
I memean, he sees around corners. I mean, he had literally started U.com, before Perplexity was like even like had a product like this. Like he's a visionary. Like he helped build ImageNet, which was the seminal paper that launched the whole computer vision craze in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and he helped like every step of AI innovation has been at the fore. I think he's one of the most widely cited scientists in AI, and so like very lucky to be able to work with him, and so I mean Richard's a really great guy.
Amazing. And to date, aside from what you actually personally financed, how much have you raised in total?
We've raised $13 million.
13 mil. Cool. How big's the team?
The company is about 30 to 40 employees globally.
Nice.
We have about more than half the team is in the United States, and of that, more than half is based in the Bay Area.
Yeah. How do you decide on basically what team members you want to be stateside and which you outsource? Is there a rule of thumb, or are you just really following the talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think ultimately we want to keep the IP stateside. So like things like AI and like the building of the models, PMing the development of the models and the products based on the models, and the systems, the data integrations, data engineers are stateside, the RAI engineers are stateside, our product managers are stateside, who are kind of orchestrating all this. I think you can probably outsource more of like the somewhat more non-core IP, like front end or some of the more commoditized technologies, potentially like parts of the back end, et cetera, and potential elements of customer success potentially. But they still if you're going to run a sales process, your salesperson needs to be stateside. So we have a distributed American sales force, and our core engineering is stateside. But outside of that, I think you have a broader, coverage area that you do need to cover as a company that can be outsourced. But the core selling and development is stateside.
I kept you 10 minutes over. I really appreciate it, Hikari. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this new campaign feature. This is going to come out this weekend. So I really encourage everybody to go check that out. I mean, we have lots of marketers, especially kind of like smaller teams where, founders are in there, they're tweaking the campaigns. I think this is going to be an absolute home run for people to work with one dashboard instead of 6, so congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can check us out at Omnichannel.com. You can sign up for a free trial, and let us know what you think. Let me know what you think. My email is hi@omnichannel.com, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, message me on LinkedIn or X, curious to get your thoughts.
You bet. I will link everything in the show notes if you want to check that out, ladies and gentlemen, to connect personally, and then of course Omniky.com, where you can go check out the beautiful product. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ryan.
So let's talk about podcasts for a second. You're listening to one, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you so much. But have you ever thought about being a guest on a podcast? Like seriously, imagine sharing your story and your expertise and your business all on shows where your ideal customers are already listening. Kitcaster connects founders and entrepreneurs, professionals, with podcasts that actually make sense for their brand. No pitching, no guessing. You just have great conversations on great shows. And the best part, Kitcaster handles everything. You just show up and bring your A game, Kitcaster does the rest. This is hands down one of the easiest ways to grow your personal brand and just create a wellspring of content. For short video, for blog posts, for speaking engagements, for whatever. So if you've been thinking, yeah, I really need to step up my content game, go to kitcaster.com and apply today. Now back to the show.